I'm Robert Harden, the Director of the Sumter County Library, and I want to welcome you to the Sumter County Library and this evening's program in honor of Black History Month. I would also like to give a special thank you to the Humanities Council of South Carolina for making this event possible. This program is sponsored by the Humanities Council of South Carolina, a state program of the National Endowment for the Humanities, inspiring, engaging, and enriching South Carolinians with programs on literature, history, culture, and heritage. Excuse me. Before we get started, I wanted to recognize some of our library staff and board members. We have Frank Schuler, who is the chair of the library board, in the back of the room there. And we also have Mary Pack and Brandolyn Love. Mary and Brandolyn organized this evening's program. I think Brandolyn is, there she is, she's coming up the back. They both organized this evening's program, and I thank them very much for putting this together for us. And this gentleman here is Ford Simmons. He's doing the videotaping this evening. And we have another staff member, Brenda Swan, in the back there as well. And I'd like to recognize all their hard work on behalf of the Sumter County Library. Thanks. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to turn things over to our MC for this evening's event.
Can everyone hear me? Harambe. Can I hear you say Harambe?
Harambe.
I bring you greetings. I am a native of Sumter, South Carolina. It is a privilege to come back home. I graduated from Claflin University and moved off to Alaska to pursue a master's degree. I have traveled all over the planet to teach, and now it is a pleasure to be back home in Sumter amongst my very own people. And I also have a student that I would like to present to you tonight. Not only have I come back to Sumter, but in the spirit of being an educator, I had never taught an African American until I returned home. I lived amongst the Eskimos, I taught on the Indian reservation, and upon returning to South Carolina, I had the pleasure of meeting many students in this town, one by the name of Nicholas Sparks. Tonight I'm going to just bring forth a small gift that I get in the classroom every day to give you an opportunity to hear a speech he's been working on. One day he aspires to go into the legal field and become someone much like the Dr. Martin Luther King. Last week he came up and he said, "Miss Shannon, I've been working on a speech. Can I share it with you?" Afterwards, I high-fived him and did the bump with his mom and just told her, girlfriend, you're doing an awesome job. And I wanted to welcome him so that I could show him who Sumter is, who are the wonderful people who come out and support all efforts of cultural and multiculturalism. This is our family. So everyone, wave. Go ahead and wave, Nicholas, so that they can see that you become I also want to share one thing with you. There's the elementary school called Jehovah Missionary Baptist Church School. I work with the children there, and they're going to perform in a Black History Month program at the school, in which the piece that I want to do today is called, "Lord, Why Did You Make Me Blind?" And I want you to think in the mindset of children who are 5 years old, and they will be performing this next week for their parents, to emulate the book of Genesis, the first chapter, the 26th verse, and just kind of wondering, why, Lord, did you make me blind? Stay tuned. Lord, why did you make me blind? Why did you make me someone the world wants to hold back? Black is the color of dirty clothes, the color of grime and beaten streets. Black is the color of darkness. Black is the color of the streets. Why did you give me thick lips and a broad nose and kinky hair? Why did you make me someone who would receive a hatred stare? Black is the color of a bruised eye when someone gets hurt. Black is the color of darkness, and black is the color of dirt. How come my bone structure is so thick? My hips and my cheeks are so high. How come my eyes are brown and not the color of the blue sky? Lord, you know my own people misuse me. Why do I feel so used? Lord, why do I feel like everyone will try to abuse? Lord, I just don't understand what it is about my skin. Lord, why do people hate me and not look at the person within? Black is the color people are listed when they want to keep others away. Black is the color that shadows cast. Black is the end of the day. Lord, my own people mistreat me. Now, you know that just ain't right. They don't like my hair or the way I look. They say I'm too dark or too light. Now, God, don't you think it's time for you to redo creation? Lord, why don't you look at me and just start all over with creation? God answers, why did I make you black? Why did I make you black? Get up off your knees and look around. Tell me, what do you see? I didn't make you in the image of darkness. I made you in the likeness of me. I made you the color of coal, from which beautiful diamonds are formed. I made you the color of oil, that black gold that keeps people warm. I made you rich, dark earth, the soil that you can grow food. The color that you have is of a panther. She's known for her beauty and speed. Your color is the same as the black stallion, a majestic animal is he. I didn't make you in the image of darkness, child. I made you in the likeness of me. When you see all of the colors that make heaven's creation, why don't you add all of them up, and you became my greatest creation. See, your hair is the texture of lamb's wool. Such a humble little creature is he. I am the shepherd who watches over them. Child, I am the one who will watch over thee. You're the color of the midnight sky. I put the stars twinkle in your eyes. You see, there's a smile behind all that pain. That's why your cheekbones are so high. You're the color of dark clouds form. When I send my strongest weather, child, I made your lips so full, so when you kiss the ones you love, they will remember. Your bone structure is strong. Your bone structure is thick, just to withstand the burdens of time. The reflection that you see in the mirror, the next time you look, that reflection is mine. God, why did you make me black? Thank you. And now, without further ado, this was just a piece of history, but I want to present a piece of the future. Everyone, please clap for Mr. Nicholas Frank.
I will now recite some Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will sit down together at a table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. Yes, I have a dream.
We also have a wonderful woman who's about to come before us. Not a problem. Next we'll have Miss Sharon Cooper Murray. greatly known to us as the Gullah Lady, and she is the ambassador of the Gullah culture, an advocate for preservation and the cultural aspects of the entire Black community. She's traveled throughout the entire eastern United States, telling stories, showing her crafts, giving demonstrations of the Gullah heritage. Ms. Sharon Cooper Murray is a native of South Carolina, where she was raised in Florence County. After attending college in Tennessee, she returned to South Carolina, and she has been in Charleston County ever since. With her crafts, she is a utilitarian. She is a decorator. She is a social and spiritual pioneer for her community. She has been enlightening people all over about the ways of the folklore of Gullah tradition, especially a lot of the crafts that are overlooked. Some of the things that you see on the table today, some of the heritage that we have in our patch quilts, these are just small things inside her great craft that she brings. She knows that lots of people have forgotten the tradition, so she's here today to reawaken this. Everyone, please give a warm Sumter, South Carolina welcome to Ms. Sharon Cooper Murray.
I'm Sharon Cooper Murray, and am known as the Gullah Lady. And this evening, I'd like us to explore the Gullah culture. And for us to do that, we're going to look at three things. First, we'll look at who the ancestors of the Gullah people were and why they came to Carolina. Next, we'll look at the language, which is called an English Creole. And last, we'll look at music, traditional Gullah folk music. The most widely accepted theory of how rice entered Carolina says that a captain of a slaving vessel that had been traveling the Isles of Madagascar ported into Charlestown. And when he arrived, he was very ill, and his ship was in need of much repair. Well, this was somehow brought to the attention of a Dr. Woodward, who invited him into his home and nursed him back to health. And appreciation for the medical assistance and the hospitality, he gave him several bags of seed rice. Dr. Woodward was not only a physician, he was also a planter and started to experiment with the crop. Realizing it would grow, he shared this with other planters, and that was the beginning of the rice culture. When it was realized rice would grow in Carolina, there was a need for a very large labor force. Well, at the time, there were only 2 known groups that had been growing rice for centuries. They were the Africans and the Asians. There was somewhat of a problem getting to China, but Africans were already being sold into slavery in places like Brazil, for sugarcane, the Caribbean, Barbados, also for sugarcane. So it was known where one could find an ample supply of people that already had the skill for this crop that was growing in Carolina. Now, the kind of rice introduced here was called Carolina Gold and needed to be flooded 3 times. The first flooding would be to germinate the seed, and that flooding would last from 8 to 10 days. Then the fields would be drained and start to grow. As soon as one could stand maybe about 50 feet away from a field and look up and down the rows, and all you saw were the green sprouts, it would be time for the second flooding, which lasted 2 weeks and was designed to kill the weeds. Now, the third flooding was a gradual flooding. It took 6 to 8 weeks because a rice stalk is very thin and fragile, actually too fragile to support the seed that grows at the top. So over the 6 to 8 weeks, as the stalks grew, the water would be gradually elevated. The water served as support. At the end of the 6 to 8 weeks, the field would be drained, harvested, and then taken to the plantation workyard. Now, when it got to the workyard, it was time for hand processing. So I brought the tools this evening that one would use to hand process rice. Rice would be mounted in tall mounds directly in the sun so they could dry quickly. Now, the first task would be to separate the grains from the stalk, because they're cut off about 12 inches above the ground, still attached to the stalk. So the first thing they use is this. This is called a flail, and a flail is used for threshing. They go to the mounds and grab several bundles and lay them on the ground, and then take the long stick and flip the short stick over. Each time that short stick would hit the bundle, it would jar the grains to the ground. Well, as soon as they've done that, another task comes. Because while you're threshing, you're going to break stalks. If it's a windy day, whatever bits and pieces of trash that are blowing about in the wind would get mixed with the grain. So the next step is to separate the trash from the grains. So they'd use this kind of basket. This basket is a sweetgrass basket, and it's called a fanner. And a fanner is used for winnowing. Winnowing is like sifting. So they'd scoop the grains up from the ground, and in a circular motion and up, excuse me, the idea is the wind would blow the trash away and the grains would fall back into the basket. Rice grows in a hull like a peanut. So the next step is to crack the hull to get the grain out. So we'll move to the mortar. A mortar is just a hollowed out stump. And this is the pestle. Now the pestle has a flat end and a cone-shaped end. The flat end is used for pounding, and pounding is done with a pound and twist. As you pound, you crack the hull. When you twist, you roll the grain out. So now we go back to the fanner basket. And this time it's to winnow to separate the hulls from the grain. So again, in a circular motion and up, the hulls blow away and the grains fall back into the basket. Rice has a starchy buildup between the hull and the grain. They believed if they allowed the starch to remain on the grain, it would rot before it got to Europe. So one last time back to the mortar. And this time it's to polish the rice. And polishing is done with the cone-shaped end by stirring. As you stir, the grains rub against each other and the starch falls to the bottom. Now there were some who believed not all of the starch would fall to the bottom, that some would still be stuck to the grain. So one last time back to the fanner basket. And this time it's to winnow to get rid of the starch that didn't fall to the bottom. So again, in a circular motion and up, the starch blows away and the grains fall back into the basket. I wanted to tell you a little about the work that was done on a rice plantation as a means of letting you see what kind, but also the number of times you had to go back and forth and back and forth. If they had not come up with a very good communication system, can you imagine what would have happened if you were trying to get people to do this? Though the task seems simple, to get hundreds of people to work together, it was necessary to come up with a reliable but yet simple form of communications. It said when the large influx of West Africans arrived in Carolina, they spoke up to 109 African languages and dialects. So many were in slavery and could hardly understand one another. So it was necessary to create what's called a Creole language. They believe that 14 languages, it's combined with that many, but these are just the languages of the mariners they came in contact with on the Middle Passage, in the conditioning forts, and on the varying plantations. They combined those 14 languages with up to 109 African languages and dialects. But because they came to the New World, which is English-based, today, the majority of the words that you hear in Gullah are English words. But they are spoken on the rhythms of West African languages. And they also have the same grammatical structure. I wanted you to hear the cadence and the flow of the Gullah language, so I thought an interesting way, rather than just stand here and lecture you all night, an interesting way would be to take you into the culture of the Gullah people and to the stories that they created. So I have a few stories I'd like to share with you. Now, for most of you, I think, maybe you're not accustomed to the Gullah language. So I'm going to tell the story to you in Gullah so you can actually hear the cadence of this language. But I will translate the stories into English. The first story I'd like to share with you was told to me by a woman we called Miss Flood. I conducted an oral history project on Johns and Wadmalaw Island in the early 90s. The people that I interviewed were from 78 to 96 years old. The oral history project lasted a year and a half. So sometimes when I went to their houses, they really didn't feel like answering my questions. They wanted to talk about stuff. And some of that stuff was stories. The stories they'd been told as children by their parents and their grandparents. Well, about midway through the project, I was a little behind. I needed to find a place that I could interview at least 5 people in one day. I chose to go to Johns Island to a place called Rural Mission. And there I went in, and I was able to interview 5 women. Now, when I walked in the door, I saw Miss Flood. but I'd been told that she had had a stroke several months earlier. And I thought, I'll be considerate and I won't try to interview her because I thought she might still have some problems with her speech. So of course I interviewed the other 5 women and am about to leave. Well, I pushed the door open and stepped out, and I felt one of these taps on the shoulder. Not one of those taps, one of these taps. And I turned, and it was Miss Flood. And she said, Queen, I wanted to get to do that. Yeah, that's happening to me. I don't know what you want for no man. That was pretty much what I did. Well, let me tell you what Miss Flood said to me. She said, hey, what do you think you're doing? You ask all the rest of them all them questions. They don't know nothing. I'm the one who know everything. So for the next hour and a half, we sat under a tree, and Miss Flood told me this story. Now, as I said, I'll tell you the story first in Gullah, and then translate the story. In Gullah, the story is called See, I'm trying to get it for sing for the and soon as I sing for it today, they're digging it up and say shaz, and digging it up and say shaz, and digging it up and say shaz. It's a want some shaz. When I sing on the greeny bed yet, what he said, it's city a house that he shit. It look you city cool and he shit. It look at the dirty dumb big and dark thing and he's sure they want to know I'm him and then the sure. And digging it up and say shaz. And digging it up and say shaz. And digging it up and say shaz. It's a want some shaz. Or I was that sing the big band yet been 2 bucks. That sing been a spawn wing and a brunch from say. Trying to get away to shut them thing up. So the next man in for the drop me and that thing fly on top the hay bus and wait for my hand for with you. And when he put it to ready to digging it up and say shaz. And digging it up and say shaz. And digging it up and say shaz. It's a want some shaz. What all was that singing at Wally's and ruins the old honey? Ever honey when I know I honey got my shop? Well, I tell you that honey got my shop. Honey got my sugar, regret. In English, the story is called You Fought Two Croquettes. Now you see, long time ago, the rooster was not the first to get up in the mornings. It was the hen. And as soon as her feet hit the dirt, she'd dig in the dirt and say shoes. And dig in the dirt and say shoes. And dig in the dirt and say shoes. She'd say, I want some shoes. Because when she looked around the barnyard, she saw the horse had shoes. She looked at the hooves on the cow. And the cow had shoes. She even looked at the muddy, dirty pig. And the pig had shoes. So she wanted to know why I don't have no shoes. So she dig in the dirt and say shoes. And dig in the dirt and say shoes. And dig in the dirt and say shoes. She'd say, I want some shoes. Well, that old rooster in the back of the barnyard would be so angry. He'd span his wings and prance around, trying to think of a way to shut them up. So the next morning, just before dawn, the rooster got up before the hens and flew on top the highest post and waited for the hens to come out. And like always, as soon as their feet hit the dirt, they dig in the dirt and say shoes. And dig in the dirt and and say shoes, and dig in the dirt and say shoes. They'd say, I want some shoes. Well, that old rooster twirled around and said, old hens, if you want to know why you have no shoes, well, I'll tell you why you have no shoes. You have no shoes because your foot too crooked. So from that day until this day, the rooster continues to get up in the mornings trying to convince the hens that the reason they have no shoes is because of the shape of their foot. But of course, to no avail, the hens continue to dig in the dirt and say, shoes, I want some shoes. Now, you know, all stories in Gullah pretty much have a moral to it. Now, I'm going to share the moral with you just as it was shared with me. Now, the moral goes like this. It says, men, oh, men, men, never, but never try to come between a woman and her shoes. Ladies, I thought you might appreciate that. Now, you know, when I come out and I'm able to tell stories, this next story, if I'm only able to tell one, I tell this one. Because I think this one touches everyone, and it has a lesson that everyone can learn from. Now, in Gullah, the story is called Kumyanginya, and the story goes a little like this. It says, look at that kumya singing here, what that thing gonna do it at the mix up, and trap to death, and mix up, sir. He said, Binya, but I look to the one and see that thing gonna do. So this young DC thing with a shh, take to the way. Oh, come here, say, don't tell it like way down, you start being, it's not that thing to have a thing, Binya, better. Shh, take to the way. When not saying when I look at you, shut all the other Binya, better. Shh, take to the way. Oh, hi, come here, but I'll be sing. But then that thing gonna do that thing tight for them. Say, they're not thing gonna look at the feet instead. Don't eat very full not singers. But every man is very rubber clean if I sing that thing gonna do it at all. They're not sing that I'm eating very full not singers. That is one man. This for it will clean not sing when I still use in the venom to be a dance kitten here if you're still. You know what being here, I'm making it try for your arm. That thing when I flew up a wing and it shh. Trees up to this girl and they rest every reason that thing that I will is a room and I walked up the reason that thing that the bell end to the room is like a rock. I'm never it. And it's time to say, oh, Lanja, please let me know here. What is it, making me add them thing that I've been doing nothing and then it said, he cropped the hell and then they cool but I stepped in that cool side. They call me on, but I've been singing because that thing going on there again, that thing chat for mix, and then a mix, but it's sleeping the cat. And that thing when I come to there and see the big ball of cool nanny here, the big ball of cool nanny there, the big ball of cool nanny everywhere, but you never see the nanny move and that thing when I'm outside, one time is that, shh, big out a minute, shh, big out a minute, shh. Big God, until you won't have to come away there. see, come here was a young, feisty thing that was always in the yard just mixing up and throwing up dirt and just always causing some kind of confusion. You see, Ben here used to look through the window and see him do it. So this one day, Ben here walked over to come here and said, you know what? It's time to take to the wind. It's time to fly further south. Well, come here said, oh no, I'm not leaving. I like it here. The weather's nice. There's plenty of food. Oh no, I'm not leaving. Well, you see, Ben here didn't waste a second trying to convince him that he needed to leave. He simply started flapping his wings and took to the skies and started to fly away. And when he looked over his shoulder, all the other Ben here's were flapping their wings and taken to the skies. Well, come here was so happy because when he looked around, all the Ben here's were gone. So he started celebrating. First he danced and danced and danced, and then he'd look at the food that he couldn't eat when the Ben here's were there, and he didn't just start eating. He'd walk around sucking down the food. He'd go till he'd eat his stomach full, and then he'd go to sleep. Well, you see, each and every morning, he'd do the same exact thing. He'd get up celebrating that the Ben here's were gone by dancing, and then he'd eat his stomach full and then go to sleep. But this one morning, as soon as he stepped out of his house, it was so cold until the feathers on top of his head stood straight up in the air, frozen stiff. And then it hit him. What Ben here meant when he said, it's time to take to the wind. 'Cause Ben here had been here a long time and had seen many winters. But now come here had just got here. He had never seen a winter. So he tried to do the same thing that he saw Ben here do. He started flapping his wings really fast and shot himself up to the sky. But what he didn't understand was this. If it's cold enough on the ground to freeze your feathers stiff, it is much, much colder in the sky. So when he shot himself up to the sky, his breast started freezing. Well, he thought he could turn around and get away from the cold. Then his back started freezing. Then he started falling to the ground just like a rock. He was sure he was going to die. 'Cause if he didn't die from that long fall from the sky to the ground, he certainly was going to die from being frozen to death. So he didn't ask God to save his life. he started saying, "Oh Lord, please, save my soul. Oh, please, take my soul to heaven. Forgive me for all the mean and rotten things I've done in my life." And as soon as he said that, bang, he hit the ground. He landed so hard, he cracked a hole in it. And the cow just stepped right over him and right on top of it. Oh, Come Here was as happy as he could be. Because you see, he didn't die from that long fall from the sky to the ground. And now, this warm stuff was thawing him out. He was going to live, so he wanted to get it all over. So he started twisting and mixing. But in the pasture, there was a cat. And the cat came through the pasture every day. And it would see the big piles of cow nanny here, cow nanny there, cow nanny everywhere, but it had never seen nanny that moved, and this one was moving. So it ran over and started picking at it, and he kept picking at it, and kept picking at it until finally he uncovered Come Here. And what did he do? He ate it. Now, you know, sometimes when I say that last sentence, I'm the only one in the room laughing. The audience goes something like, "Oh." And you know, all cultures create stories. They create stories for entertainment, but the main reason that cultures create stories is so the older generation can impart some knowledge about life to the younger generation. So usually a story will have a moral to it. In the case of Come Here and Been Here, it has 3. On the island, if someone does something to us that we don't like, you know what we'll say? "That thing not even again." But you know, everyone that nannies on you, that is, does something to you that you just don't like, they are not necessarily your enemy. Because you see, when that cow nannied on Come Here, what did it do for him? That's right, it warmed him up. It thawed him out. It saved his life. Now this is the second one. If you find yourself in a bad situation, I mean covered in nanny from the head to toe, and someone comes running up to you and says, "Hey, I'm going to get you out of that," and they start picking and picking and picking, now those people ain't necessarily your friend. Because when that cat uncovered Come Here, what did it do to him? It ate him. Now this is the third one, and I think this one is the most important. And this one says, maybe it's a price that all of us must pay for living, but at some point in your life, you're going to find yourself in a situation that you do not like. You're going to find yourself in what we call nanny. But if you are safe and if you're secure, if you can be patient and you can be still, well, a nanny if you leave it out in the sun and don't fool up with it. Oh, you know, at first when I said that, no one said anything. So I was thinking I must have an urban audience here. But we did get to the dry and dry. And you know what? One day, when you walk past, it won't even be nanny anymore. It will be a fine, powdery substance. No matter what situation you find yourself in, there is something that's inevitable to happen, and that is the wind of change is always going to come. We might not know when it's coming, but it's always going to come. So if you are safe, and if you're secure, if you can be patient and you can be still, when that nanny turns to powder and the wind of change comes along, it will blow all that powder away. And unlike come here, you could get up, dust yourself off, and take to the wind. Now, I don't know, maybe I forgot to tell you guys that I'm usually not the only one that stands up here and talks. I probably forgot to mention that when I got up here. Well, as I said, we're going to look at some music. Children's folk music is my specialty, but I'd like to tell you a little bit first of how the music came about. When West Africans were brought to Carolina, they worshipped things like the moon, the sun, the river, trees, and so forth, things that one can see. When they were introduced to Christianity, they didn't readily accept Christianity. But it's said when they heard the story of the exodus of the Israelites, they began to accept this new God, because it was said that this God is no respecter of person. So if he was willing to do that for the Israelites, he would certainly do that for them. So they started to accept Christianity. But there was one small conflict, I'd say, in that when you think of Africans worshiping and celebrating, then one can think of a lot of movement is going to be happening at that time. Well, as Europeans worship, their belief was that one should keep your foot firmly on the floor. So of course that was totally against what they believed. So they started to sneak out in the woods at night, and they'd clear out a clearing and leave the bushes really high on the outer edges. And they'd go in, and there they would sing and shout and create their own songs. Now this area was called, in some areas, a hush harbor, because they would go in and they'd sing at a low tone. In other areas, they call it a brush harbor, because the bushes are all around it. Over time, when it was realized by many of the masters that they were sneaking out and they were coming from varying plantations and meeting at night, that may possibly not be a good idea because they could be contemplating running away. So many of them put what's called a praise house on the plantation. If you go to a plantation today and there was a praise house, it's generally the first building closest to the mansion house. So they brought that concept of praise house onto freedmen's quarters, and in some areas on the islands we still have a few of them that exist today. Well, that style of music that they created in the hush harbors and brush harbors and praise houses was called call and response. And that just means you got a leader and you got the backup. Well, that same style of music transferred to children's songs. Now, the song I'd like to introduce you to in children's songs is a song that they used when they played ring play games. And ring play games are just games where you'd have a lot of children holding hands, walking around in a circle. There'd be one child in the center. The one in the center is the caller. Each Each time the song ends, a new child is rotated in until all of them have been callers. To win the game, all you had to do was sing the song the best and shake the best, and you were the winner. So size meant nothing. So I'd like to sing one of those songs. Old lady come from Booster, had 2 hens and a rooster. The rooster died, the old lady cried, she can't get the egg like a nooster. Oh my, you look so, oh pa, you look so. You been there when I been gone, e papa and e mama gonna buy 'em back. Pin in my head, ranky-tanky, pin in my neck, ranky-tanky, pin in my arm, ranky-tanky, pin in my hand, ranky-tanky, pin in my back, ranky-tanky, pin in my thigh, ranky-tanky, pin in my leg, ranky-tanky, pin in my foot, ranky-tanky. So can we do that? Sure, we can sing that song. I'll tell you how we'll do it. I'll say the line. All you have to do is repeat after me. All right, here we go. Old lady come from Booster.
Old lady come from Booster.
Had 2 hens and a rooster.
Had 2 hens and a rooster.
Okay, just a minute. I distinctly heard someone say, rooster. No rooster in this song. Rooster in this song. Okay, all right. Had 2 hens and a rooster.
Had 2 hens and a rooster.
The rooster died.
The rooster died.
The old lady cried.
The old lady cried.
She can't get the egg like a rooster.
She can't get an egg like she used to.
Second verse. Oh my, you look so.
Oh my, you look so.
Oh pa, you look so.
Oh pa, you look so.
You been there when I been gone.
You've been there when I've been gone.
Hey papa and hey mama gonna buy 'em back.
Your papa and your mama gonna buy 'em back.
Oh, now that was just wonderful. Some of you are probably on a choir, I'm sure. But I know you noticed we didn't actually finish the song, right? Okay. So I'm just looking across the room and thinking that if I could get, say, 6 of you to come up here with me, we could finish the song. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to come on your own. If you don't come, I have to drag you. And if it's all women, I'm going to have to drag you. Okay. All right, so you 2 fellas right here. I don't have to, yeah, you. You. Okay, so the guy in the back there with the glasses. All right, this is what we're going to do. One line straight across. All right, this is what we're going to do. All of us are going to sing the second verse. But when we get to the part that I go, pain in my head, that's going to be y'all part. Now, you don't have to say pain in the head. You can say pain in any part of the body you like. You just have to say the phrase, and you got to shake something the whole time. So you have to shake something from the first word to the last word. Now, when they say that phrase, which is pain in the whatever, our response, I saw you, but you left when I got ready to call the people. Not you, Mary. He knows who I'm pointing at. Yeah, looking back, yeah, you. You were gone. Okay, so when they say that phrase, all of us are going to say, Ranky-tanky.
Ranky-tanky.
Okay, well, you know that the chorus of the song is really the attitude of the song, right? So we're going to have to, I'm going to want to hear y'all say, ranky-tanky.
Ranky-tanky.
There we go. Oh, my, no, I'm first. Oh, my, you look so.
Oh, my, you look so.
I said all of us would have to sing, not them by themselves. So we're going to have to go back to the song. You know, every time we mess up, we'll have to go back. Oh, my, you look so.
Oh, my, you look so.
Oh, Pa, you look so.
Oh, my, you look so.
You've been there when I've been gone.
You've been there when I've been gone.
And Papa and your Mama gonna buy 'em back.
And Papa and your Mama gonna buy 'em back.
Okay, now this is the part. Would you please move here, sorry. This is the part I usually sit. I probably forgot to mention that. Okay, so what's your name?
Frank.
Frank. And your name?
Sunita.
Sunita. Okay, now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and I'm either going to call Frank or Sunita. Now when I call you, you're going to say your phrase, which is pain and the something. And what is our response? Oh. I guess something must have happened when I said that. So when they say their phrase, what are we going to do?
Ranky-tanky.
There we go. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, Sunita. She thought I was going to call you Frank. Zanita, we're going to have to hear you. Remember that little part I said that you had to shake something?
Okay.
Okay, so
Just start shaking.
whenever you're ready. But you got to say the phrase at the same time. You can do whatever part you like. We're going to need you to do that again. I'm going to give you the numbers. 1, 2, 3, Zanita.
Pain in my head.
Ranky-tanky.
No, Zanita, wait a minute. Okay. Now remember I said that you had to shake from the first word to the last. And what you did, Zanita, was pain in my head. Then you stopped. Now we call that the end shake. We don't need you to shake all the way through. 1, 2, 3, Zanita.
Pain in my head.
Ranky-tanky.
Now see, we don't jump to Frank. Frank is now last. So whenever you're ready, we'll just go down the line. Okay. You ready? Go ahead. All right.
Pain in my hands,
Ranky-tanky.
pain in my back,
Ranky-tanky.
Pain in my head.
Ranky-tanky.
pain in my feet,
Ranky-tanky.
Pain in my knee.
Ranky-tanky.
pain in my arm,
Ranky-tanky.
pain in my tummy.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, all of you that came up, thank you so much for being such a great support. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a few more minutes. So if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, but just before you do that, I want to tell you a little bit about the piece we have over here. This is called rag quilting, and all of the pieces you see on the front of the pillows, as well as on the top of 1/2 of what's going to be a queen size quilt, there is no stitching. We what's called rag quilting. So we use a nail, work it through the burlap, and tie 2 knots. So all of that is just 2 knots being tied. It's probably one of the most simple crafts that one could find. But when I was taught how to rag quilt on Guatemala Island in the mid-90s, and then I started to tell stories and the storytelling career started to move, so I didn't have time to visit with them. And when I finally got back, I found that a good many of them had passed away, and the others were entirely too old to tie knots anymore. So I realized I was the last of the active rag quilters in our area. So we started what's called the Community Rag Quilting Preservation Initiative. That's a little mouthful, but we wanted to make sure that we could travel and teach people how to rag quilt so we won't lose the art form. Now I travel the Gullah Geechee Heritage Corridor, which is the coastal regions from Wilmington, North Carolina to St. Augustine, Florida. But because I'm from South Carolina, we travel the entire state of South Carolina. So it's really a very simple art form. If anyone is interested in us coming, we'd love for you to host the Community Rag Quilt, because what we do is this. So far, on this first half of the quilt, we've had 1,050 people to put 1 or more pieces on. We've had people from 15 states and 3 countries. When you put 1 or more pieces onto the rag quilt, we get your name and city and state. So once both sides are completed, then every organization that hosted the quilt will travel to them. But along with that will be the folding placard that will have all of the names of everyone that had a hand in making the quilt. Because we consider the planet a community. So we're saying the Community Rag Quilting Preservation Initiative. So if any of you at some point would like to learn how to do it and would like to host something in your area, please contact me. We'll try and schedule something. Again, do you have any questions? I'll try to answer whatever I can. Yes?
I have a question, but I just wanted to let you know that I do have a copy of the New Testament in Gullah language, and I brought that.
Oh, that is so cool. You know, the day it was premiered in Waxhaw, North Carolina, I produced a group of singers called the Gullah Singers. They were invited up and they sang the day that they premiered that. They came and stayed on the island about 12 years, and they brought linguists. Because people have been trying to write Gullah since 1749. The problem has always been they didn't have a linguist. So all of us tend to hear words slightly different. So sometimes they would write a book and you couldn't figure out what the words were because they were trying to make it sound like a Gullah word, and the rest of us couldn't figure what that word was. But that one is a very good rendition, and if you learn the sentences well, you can speed up the rhythm of speaking it. Yes, sir?
I attended college at Allen University, and there was 3 students from Jones Island, and one guy was a terrific ball player, and I had some contact. And another question I ask you too is, what about beautiful South Carolina? Isn't that Gullah people here?
Well, yeah, see, according to the National Park Service, the Gullah people are from Wilmington, North Carolina, to St. Augustine, Florida on the coast. And the reason they actually use that geographic area is because that's where all of the rice plantations were. And they mainly got West Africans for rice because they were known to grow it. So yeah, that's Gullah as well. Yes, we have quite a few people that do tours. I mean, Gullah Tours does a tour. Sights and Insights does one. I can't remember the name of the other, but it's about 3 of them that actually come out to the islands and do tours. Yes?
When you started your research, did you think that you would be doing this years later?
Oh no, I definitely didn't start the research to do this. I moved there, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, because women never tell their ages. Okay, so my aunt and uncle lived in New York, and they moved to Guatemala Island, which was originally his home. I was about to get out of school, and they called me and said they had moved to an island. Well, when I thought of an island, I thought of like a St. Croix or something. I agricultural island. So I get there, and all I see is cucumber fields and tomato fields and cabbage fields and every other kind of vegetable field. So needless to say, I was somewhat upset. And, but after a few days of pouting, I do go out and start to venture, and I heard the people talking. I was captivated. It was amazing to me. How could you live so close to an urban city such as Charleston and still be able to speak that? And everyone around me on Wadmalaw spoke it. And I just love to hear them talk. And over the years, I later married a man that had been born into the culture and had been in the Army forever. So when he came back, when he finally got out of the Army, I met him and we got married 3 years later. Now, I said I was fascinated by it. I was. But fascination tends to wear off rather quickly when you can't understand what they're saying. And when they're talking to you, you don't know whether they're saying something nice or something mean or what. And then, you know, sometimes you just sense, I know they're saying something bad to me. But you can't do anything because you don't know. You just think that. So he had a great aunt. That was my buddy. And over about 5 or 6 years, I learned the language. And as a result of that oral history project and just going to her house just years, I learned it. And I've got to tell you guys something. When I learned the language and learned those stories, I told my friends, I had no clue that storytelling was an industry. So no, I had no thought that I would go this way until one day a friend of mine coordinated a festival. And one of her acts didn't show up. And she asked me to go up there and tell stories. I thought, oh no, I'm not doing that. But I finally do agree, and I go up. And when I came off stage, a man walked up to me and started to tell me about storytelling. And in 2010, I got to tell at the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, that's our Super Bowl. So no, I had no clue that this would lead me. But I must say, you know, I think sometimes we plan our lives one way, and the best way for us is in front of us, not something that we planned. And I could not be any happier with what I ended up doing. Yes, sir?
Do you say that out of Gullah language, Chinese language, and Spanish language, that Gullah is the hardest to learn?
Well, I don't know whether Gullah is the hardest to learn, but I will say because Gullah is not a written language, it makes it where you really need to live among the people to learn it. Where Chinese and Spanish and all of those are written languages, and you can get tapes and books and so forth, and you can learn, and there are even classes. But in Gullah, there are no classes, so you really need to be among the people to learn the language. So I don't know whether that makes it harder, but I know you don't have the resources that you would have in these other languages. Yes?
Are there any part of the islands that are still in the old way, that you would see the chapels and see the houses and all of that from yesterday?
Well, you know what's really interesting about the island is that they live communal style. But no, some of the things have changed. Like you could see this really fabulous house built here, and next door to it you see something that look almost like a hut because their cousins live there, and you can but they still live communal style. So you'll still have a lot of people that are in a family. You'll have 4 or 5 houses that are kind of sharing this huge yard. But the style of house is according to, I guess, the income of the one that's living there. So the older ones, a lot of them have a tendency to live in those still little tiny houses. But we have on John's Island, and this rural mission works with all of the islands. And what they do, they are a rehab and a repair service. So it's a nonprofit, and they do it at no cost to the people. So they do some work on the houses, but you still find a lot of the old ways that still exist. Now,
no restoration, though. No restoration of a former village.
Well, you know, you don't really see freedmen villages, as one would call them. They still live close enough. They're more like family clans now instead of a lot of other people from a lot of other family last names. You will have 6 or 7 people that live, families that live in this cove. So the way the roads are and the areas, like everyone knows where Smiley Hill is, because all the Smileys live on Smiley Hill. And so it's still set up that way, but it's not exactly called the same thing.
Are you familiar with the village, the Gullah village of Beaufort?
Gullah village, are you talking about that African village? I know that there's an African village. I'm not so sure that I'm aware of a Gullah village. Yeah, the African village really is kind of designed how an African village would look, and the same kinds of worship and setup is in that African village. Now, I haven't been there in years, so I'm not sure whether it still exists, but I've been there before. But it's a little, it's somewhat different.
We talking about the Fusky Island?
Well, the Fusky has been developed now. Yeah, but what she's talking about is the African village. It's near Beaufort, but it's actually in the area they call Sheldon, and that's where the African village is. And some people moved from somewhere else. I don't know whether they were from Africa or not, but they created the same scenario one would find in an African village, and then they let people come in and tour. Yes.
I attend the Gullah Festival in Beaufort, and I had the privilege to see Pearlie Sue.
Oh yeah, Anita.
And she's really rare.
Yes, she
I
is.
bought a Gullah cookbook, which I really could not read it. But
That's
I
cute.
was just interested in the rest of these. But she's a very good storyteller. Like
Yes, she is. I've known Anita for years. Well, I'm probably not the one that could actually help you. I mean, I could read it and tell you what it says. But when I moved there, they cook red rice. I had never seen red rice before, but they cook red rice. And now, in the PD, macaroni and cheese, when I was growing up, was not the big thing. It was potato salad that was more the big thing. So when I get down there and everyone is doing the macaroni and cheese and the red rice, and like when I grew up, my mother folded collard leaves, and then she julienned them. Well, they don't do that up there. When I got married and moved, all of the women, I've never been much of a cook, but all of the women, you know, always when it's cooking day, everyone loves that. I don't particularly like that, but now I'm married in the family, so, you know, I need to at least act as if I like it. Okay, so I go, and I'm accustomed to my mother cleaning them, and you put them together and roll it, and then you julienne. So I'm over there just julienning away, and they looked at me, and they snatched that knife from me and said no, because they pluck it. Do you know how long it will take you to pluck it? Oh no, we could never do that. We'll have to use that knife. Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, I can tell you about the cooking, because my mother-in-law and sister-in-laws definitely cook. Now the food is great. I just thought some of the techniques were just a tad too time-consuming. Yes, ma'am.
The baskets, do you, they still make the baskets?
They still make the baskets now.
I understand it's a dying art just now.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I'll say that now it's a far more expensive art. Now, sweetgrass, they've developed a lot, and so when people have to travel to get the sweetgrass, then they pass the prices on. Like to get a basket this size today, it probably will cost you anywhere between $700 and $900 for this basket. But now, this basket is a little different from the decorative baskets you would buy. This basket is made primarily with the palms, but bulrush, because this would be a working basket they would have had on plantations. So when you get the decorative baskets, you're going to see a lot more pine needle, more sweetgrass in it than you'd see in something like this. But for what I do demonstrating, this kind will last a long time. The others are more decorative, so you need to sit them on something and leave them alone. If you try to work with them, they're just going to tear apart.
By the way, your voice is wonderful for this type of profession.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a good evening.